Welcome to Module 9A. During this week in Modules 9A and 9B, we're going to talk about managing the new business. And in this first module, we will kick that off. The idea here is that in the prior modules, we have talked about launching the business, getting it started, issues of figuring out where our pricing should be, legitimacy for our product or service, that customers will believe that it's real and that we are real and worthy of their hard-earned money. At this point, we're going to assume that the business has gotten off the ground, it's at least been launched successfully, now we have to worry about making it happen and running it. So I will discuss in this module some of the issues involved in managing people from an entrepreneurial standpoint, building your entrepreneurial team, and looking at some organizational issues. Basically, this all builds on courses such as Principles of Management, which you should have taken someplace along the line prior to this, organizational theory, just general management courses. But we'll try and look at it from the perspective of a new venture. Well, most companies, even small entrepreneurial companies, should have and need a board of directors. Obviously, if you're a sole proprietor, a one-person firm, you are the board of directors. But most firms don't really get by with just one person. You really need a couple of people, and if you have a couple of business partners, again, they're going to want to have a say in management. And as the chart here says, and I talked about this in a legal lecture, the board of directors provides the strategic direction, the strategic guidance for the new firm. The board of directors meets typically quarterly, doesn't get involved in the day-to-day operations, but again, looks at the big picture and what the company needs to get healthy, stay healthy, and grow. You see the word legitimacy here again. Having well-known board members, important people, perhaps a critical supplier, a critical customer on the board of directors. Having somebody from, if you're a software company, maybe having some executive from Microsoft as part of your board of directors would help lend legitimacy, an air of respectability, and, as the slide says, credibility to the firm. Now, the board of directors typically aren't paid. These are not paid positions, or maybe they get $1 a year or plus expenses or something like that, and most of them don't even take that. Again, there are people who are interested in the company, perhaps big investors in the company. So you do need a board of directors. Now, in addition, there are a couple of other things that are typically used, and advisors, and we're going to look at each of these. First is a board of advisors. This is not a legal entity. Okay, it has no real responsibility, has no authority to do anything. This is they give non-binding advice. Again, this may be some of your key clients, your key customers, perhaps some suppliers, people who are, again, interested in the business. They are typically not owners. They don't own stock in the company. They're just helping to give some guidance, and they typically do this for free. Your lenders and investors make a group. Again, not something that shows in the organization chart typically. It's not a formal structure. But you may want to get together with your investors and your lenders, initially perhaps monthly, later on perhaps quarterly. A luncheon meeting, a breakfast meeting, something like that, to explain what's going on in the company and what's needed. The good, the bad, and the ugly situation. Where are we and where are we going? And again, the investors and the lenders, who are, creditors of the company, you owe the money, they want to see you stay healthy. So they are interested in giving advice and should be listened to. Then there are other professionals. Usually you go out and hire these people. You don't have, or you hire them on a contract basis. You don't hire them as employees typically until you get a bigger. Examples are accountants and attorneys. Again, big companies that have these people on staff, but a small company typically will just contract with an accountant and a business attorney to help when it's needed. Then, of course, there are business consultants. They tend to fall into two categories. The ones that are free come from places, and we talked about that, places like the Small Business Incubator, the Small Business Development Centers at the county colleges. If you think back to, I believe, the second week of the course, I talked about, getting advice and mentoring, and where there were different places available. And again, those were the Small Business Development Centers, places like the Incubator, the Greater Newark Business Development Consortium. We've had some supplemental reading on that. The Harvest Good News, in fact, I think that was last week. That was one of their flyers, and they are a nonprofit and provide seminars. Then, of course, you can always hire business consultants, paid business consultants. There's lots of them out there looking to make a buck. The problem is I know several of these folks, and there's a question as to just how valid the market is for a business consultant. One business consultant said it's not really a great marketplace ever, because with small businesses, when business is good, they don't need a paid consultant. And when business is bad, they can't afford it. So there isn't really much of a market. But in certain areas, certain situations, a marketing consultant, a communications consultant, advertising consultant, public relations, that kind of thing, may be very valuable, and it may be worth spending some money on. Well, you as the entrepreneur are faced with putting an operational organization together, an organization that's going to handle the day-to-day running of the business. And of course, your investors and your lenders are interested in what that organization and team is going to look like. That's why an important part of the business plan is the management team. What are the credentials of the management team? What's their experience? Why do you, as the lead entrepreneur, believe that this team can be successful when many small new businesses aren't? What you want to do is keep the organization simple. And initially, you have to do every job. Again, talked earlier in the class about knowing all the jobs, knowing what you have to do. Make sure you know how to repair the copier, or at least not repair the copier, put toner in the copier, put paper in the copier when you have to in case your administrative assistant is out. Know all the jobs. I believe early in the course I talked about the Jurassic Park scenario where the business was at the mercy of the one computer guy who was the villain of the movie. And that's a mistake. Don't let your business be totally at the mercy of one person and you don't understand all aspects of the job. You may have to do the job. If somebody calls in sick, you may have to answer the telephone. You may have to sit at the reception desk outside in the front office there if that person isn't there. And I have talked with people who own software companies. Drake Software is one of the companies that we deal with. And the CEO of that company says, yeah, I frequently answer the telephone myself. He said, if my secretary is busy or she's not there, the phone has to be answered. So, you can't have an ego that gets in the way of getting things done. But as you start to grow, you're going to have to delegate, let people do their jobs, okay? You're going to have to make changes as they go along, and your big job is going to be putting out fires because no matter how well you plan, no matter what your procedures are, there's always something that's going to happen that just doesn't fit the common mold, just doesn't fit the existing process, the existing structure, and you're going to have to get in there, jump in, solve it, maybe change the processes, maybe not, maybe it was just an exception, an aberration, but make sensible exceptions to the general rules. And you're going to have to be flexible. Again, you'll have your people doing the day-to-day job in the normal fashion. As a good manager, you want to be able to communicate, and the big portion of communicating is listening. If you want to be a good speaker, a good communicator, learn to listen. Okay? People have ideas, people have thoughts, people have criticism, people have suggestions. Take it in. Listen. Don't be afraid to delegate responsibility. Give people the room to do the job. Don't micromanage. As an entrepreneur, this business is your baby, this is your child, this is the thing that you created. So you're very, very prone to getting in there and doing it yourself and making sure that things don't get screwed up. But you're going to have to. You're going to have to let people make mistakes. You're going to have to provide feedback to them. Good feedback when they do a good job, corrective feedback when they mess up. And be careful with the corrective feedback. Do it properly from a positive standpoint. All right, for example, the analogy I like to use is the soccer coach. I mean, if the team has done poorly, the kids' soccer team, you don't harangue them, you don't beat them up verbally. You focus on, okay, next, this coming week we've got to work on passing skills. The guys and gals who are playing the forward positions have to learn to get up there and be in a position to capitalize on a goal, a shot on goal when it's necessary. Defenders, have to do their job. Again, providing feedback in a positive fashion. And of course, you have to train your employees. And this chart says key employees. You really have to train everybody. But of course, if you have a couple of partners in the business with you who are helping as managers and helping to run this thing, they had better be trained as well. All right, organizations themselves. The typical type of organization is a functional or organization chart. And I won't put one up. There's a couple in the textbook. Basically, they're functionally oriented, and we've all seen them. You know, you have the boxes, the CEO or the president of the company at the top, and then coming down at the second layer, you have a series of boxes, one for manufacturing, one for marketing, one for finance and administration, maybe one for engineering or R&D, depending upon the organization. Well, that's a traditional way to do it, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. All right, it is a traditional approach to looking at business, but you want to keep it simple. Again, in an entrepreneurial company, one person may handle more than one function. So you may have an organization chart that just has a box called sales and another box called marketing, but the CEO may be actually the head of sales and the head of marketing as well as the CEO. And of course, if it's a one-person company, you handle all the boxes. But another approach to organizing is called product or project oriented. And again, hopefully you've seen this in prior classes, management classes, where each product line or project has its own team of manufacturing people, its own team of marketing people, its own team of finance and administration people. Companies like Lockheed Martin tend to work that way, electronic data systems, where they are focused on large projects, particularly companies that do work with the federal government, you know, things like Lockheed Martin with Easy Pass and a few others. And you have a senior vice president in charge of the project. And you have a series of projects, so you have a series of vice presidents. And again, each project has underneath it its own manufacturing, its own group of manufacturing people, its own group of marketing people, and so forth. Well, that makes for better teamwork. However, it is expensive because, again, you've got duplication, you've got a lot of marketing people. And also, there's another aspect that as the company gets larger, you have a problem that perhaps the engineering people on one product line or project A don't talk to the engineering people on project B or project C. And there isn't a whole lot of cross communication going laterally. Well, big companies solve that problem with something called matrix management, where you wind up having laterally a vice president of engineering whose job it is to make sure that there's a cross-pollination between the engineering groups in these different projects. But again, that gets very expensive and is something that this entrepreneurial shop really can't do. Now, on a small level, you can have, if you have a couple of people in your marketing department, they may work on specific tasks. But again, what you want to do, and they may be assigned 50% of their time maybe to one particular designer or one particular project and 50% to another, and you put these teams together on an ad hoc basis. You pick the best person for that particular job. So that one designer, let's say, graphics designer, may actually be working for 2 or 3 account executives, let's say. And there's no problem with that. Of course, you want to keep it simple. Drucker said that you should have a maximum 5 layers of management for the largest companies, and certainly if you're an entrepreneurial company, keep it real simple, keep it very flat, organize your teams very much on a personal basis. On the topic of organization, there's some supplemental reading for this week that you should look at, and one of it is about Six Sigma. You should have seen Six Sigma in some of your prior courses. Again, basically it is a quality control process, making sure that things are produced repeatedly in the same fashion so that there isn't a whole lot of variation. Now the problem is if there is no variation, doesn't that stymie innovation? And there is again, a 1-page article on the supplemental reading. Please read it, and we'll also see a posting there to get your ideas. Another piece of supplemental reading that I offer to you is, again, just a 1-page synopsis from the book called A Perfect Mess. The authors are out of Columbia. It's an interesting book. I've read it. The exact title is A Perfect Mess: The Hidden Benefits of Disorder. And the idea is that a little bit of sloppiness is to be encouraged. That we can be too organized, right? That you don't have to file everything. You don't have to, don't waste time organizing your laptop, that kind of thing. Your schedule. One of the things that I found useful to me, out of this Perfect Mess book, was to be flexible in your schedule. Because there are always things that come up. If you try to plan your schedule tightly, you're going to get very frustrated because there are always traffic jams, there are always people who are late, there are always appointments that either get canceled at the last minute or wind up running longer than expected so that your appointment is late. One of the things I do, so again, their rule is stay flexible. Keep flexibility in your schedule. One of the things I do is I carry along a folder of articles, like these 2 articles in the supplemental reading, that I have literally ripped out of magazines that I've gone through and say, wow, this is something that an article that I really want to read, as opposed to just glance at and throw away. And whenever I have some downtime waiting for someone, I'd pull out that folder and get some reading done. Or maybe if you don't want to do that kind of thing, maybe just carry a book with you. That's what my wife does. One of the things that you have to constantly look at is companies, and again, bigger companies, but I bring this up in an entrepreneurial fashion because you don't want to use the habits that you've brought over with you from perhaps some corporate experience. Reorganizing. Big companies like to reorganize a lot. They've gotten away from it in more recent years, and a problem comes up. There's a disconnect between engineering and manufacturing. So should you reorganize the engineering and manufacturing? Well, typically what happens is if you do, you create new problems. It's better to form an ad hoc cross-department task team, solve it, and move on. Don't keep changing your organization structure. As a manager, you want to build in incentives, so that your managers will train and delegate the people who are heading the little teams or just managing themselves. Try to use consensual decision making. All right, the Japanese kind of took that to a fine art. Again, you should have gotten in principles of management, different ways of managing, but talking it out in a team meeting, have a morning team meeting, or perhaps several times a week. Have your key, the key people in your company just sit down over coffee and perhaps a couple of donuts, and where are we? What's happening? What are the problems? What do we got to fix? What should we do? Because other people have good ideas. Again, make sure you have a set of goals and a mission. And here we come back to the mission statement that we talked about before. All right? Make sure that everybody understands it and agrees with it. We want to get some team spirit. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about team building, but just starting that, a we spirit. How do we get people part of the team? Maybe it's as simple as, logo shirts and uniforms, coffee mugs or pens with the company name on it. Little things that seem real trite and stupid, but some of these things are team builders. I know I like to have a shirt with the company logo on it and all this kind of stuff. That was part of being part of the team. Well, you've got to manage people, as we've been talking here. However, there are problems. You'll see them. You don't want to have a big ego. You need some emotional skills. And here in talking about EQ or emotional skills, in the reading for this week, it was last week's read for next week, there is an article called The Softer Side. Softer Side. And it's about a great boss having people skills. And we talked about, again, we mentioned that early on when I said about Bill Gates, way back at the beginning of the course. Have to have good people skills. If you don't like managing people, if you're not a person who's willing to get in there and deal with people issues, and don't forget, these may not be strictly work issues, but very often you might have to, get involved with some personal issues. That people are not doing the job because of personal issues at home. And, they kind of get intertwined, and you don't want to be a amateur psychologist. That's not, unless that happens to be your training, but typically most managers and entrepreneurs are not. You don't want to play psychologist or psychiatrist, but you are going to get sucked into this. And if you don't like dealing with those kinds of things, get yourself a chief operating officer. You go worry about marketing, you go worry about PR, and you let somebody else manage the people. Now, coming back to these common issues or common problems, here you can see on the chart, and you can read this. as well as I do. I can. Forget about your ego. Don't have an ego. Run the business. Participate. You're not, even though it's your company, you're not better than anybody else. And, if you look at these people, you probably know one or two of them. I'm certain I do too. I've seen people with these kinds of styles, and it's a disaster to the company. The other thing you want to do is protect the B team. Again, this supplemental reading for today about it's the B team. And again, what is the B team? Well, it's not the superstars. What happens with superstars? You got this one performer, this great salesperson, this great designer, this great graphics person. If they're so great, they may go out and get a better job at more money. They may start their own company. Or they may burn out. That happens too. And the premise of this particular article about the B team is that the B team is really the heart and soul of the business. It's the folks that come to work every day. They don't live their jobs. They're not workaholics. They have family lives, but they're dedicated. They'll be with you for the next 15 years, and they just hold the team. The business, not the team, they hold the business together. So you got to protect them and take care of them. Focus on them. The other piece of supplemental reading is, that people should be having fun in their job. And again, not everybody lives to work. They have personal lives. They're soccer coaches, their moms, their dads, family members. And you have to take that into account. And again, take a look at that supplemental article on some of the issues that, again, you have to deal with because you're dealing with people. Again, part of the supplemental reading, I'm sorry, not the supplemental reading, part of the reading for this week, in the read for next week, or read for managing the new business, is an article called "The Right Place, Right Time," a small business article, and talks about, how small businesses are growing, how they treat their people, throwing a line to uninsured workers. Take a look at it. In terms of putting the team together, just a few thoughts. I'm going to go through this quickly. Again, we're talking about synergy. The sum is greater than the parts. Everybody contributes. That's the idea. Get ideas from other people. Share. Everybody should learn. You got to challenge your team. Understand that there are individual goals and company goals. First, make sure you take action. Again, we come back to listen. You have to plan to communicate. Commit to the goal. And you have to understand that the company's goals are important, but there are also personal goals, and try to mesh them. For example, the company's goal may be to come out with a new product, a new piece of software, implement a new application perhaps, but the one of the team members, their individual goal may be to become an expert in the C++ programming language or in some application package to acquire a new skill. Maybe it's something as simple as learning how to build really good spreadsheets in Excel. And that may mesh nicely into the new application, the new task you're trying to do for the company. But again, understand that people are going to have personal goals as well to further their own careers, to further their own self-fulfillment. And they have to be meshed together. So make sure you understand them. You got to learn as a team. Learn from your mistakes. If you bid a job, put in a proposal, and it gets rejected, have a post-mortem session. Why didn't we win? And we're not talking about finding blame or fixing blame. We're talking about figuring out what we did wrong so we don't do it again. People learn from each other. Be willing to accept criticism and make sure every member of the team understands that other members of the team will be free and encouraged to criticize and encourage, compliment, but to criticize and say, hey, this could have been done better, and to take it from a positive standpoint. I mentioned planning communication. Don't let communications just happen by chance. It doesn't work. You should have, again, either a daily meeting or twice a week, or even if it's once a week. And even if your business excuse me, is far-flung geographically, there are lots of tools out there. We're going to talk about collaboration tools in the next module to allow you to set up a weekly conference call using both the telephone and computers, and things like NetMeeting and GoToMeeting. Lots and lots of application packages out there that allow collaboration on a real-time basis. You have to communicate on a regular schedule in order to be successful. Lastly, you want to take action. You got to put in a solid effort. Challenge your team, challenge yourself. Again, nobody's driving the team. You're leading the team. Again, one of the pieces of supplemental reading I point you to, these are just one-pagers, was it's about a bigger company, obviously. If you remember Carly Fiorina, who ran Hewlett-Packard for a while, what went wrong? And basically, it was, not having the necessary people skills to do what had to be done. So, you may need training. Lastly, under organization, we've got to look at procedures, set up the procedures. They don't have to be complicated. You don't need a big procedures manual and all this kind of stuff. It could be something as simple as a job routing slip, a packing list or a picking list, sign-off sheets as to, having reviewed it, having checked it. And again, I recommend not putting just check marks or boxes that get checked off or X'd, but rather places for initials, that people have to initial it, which gives a personal, visceral commitment that, yes, I looked at this, yes, I verified that it is correct, and I initial it on the sign-off sheet. It can be very, very simple, but it is important. So again, part of the communication process. Again, make sure you delegate and train. Talked about this before. Have a backup for everybody. You may be the backup, but make sure that you back everybody up. You want to grow your people. You want to make them successful. Even if there isn't a terrific career path at your own company, if you're running a McDonald's, if you own a McDonald's franchise, you may not have a whole lot of growth opportunities for some of the people because they may not want to be owners of McDonald's or manager of McDonald's. But you're growing them, particularly the young people, in the sense of a work ethic, of treating the customer properly, of dealing with people, and sometimes dealing with some people who have real issues. You know, if you've ever worked behind the counter at a McDonald's or a Burger King, some of the customers can be problems. But again, you want to grow them so that they're successful, even if their success is outside of your company at some point in time. They may outgrow you, outgrow your company. Grace Hopper was her name. Grace Hopper, this was her motto: manage things, lead people. She was the first female admiral in the U.S. Navy. She also invented the COBOL programming language. And I had the pleasure of working with Grace Hopper a number of years ago when she was still alive, and after she had retired from the Navy and become a consultant. She was also very concerned about doing the right thing, and one of her other comments or mottos was, sometimes it's easier to apologize than it is to get permission. And that applied to the government and big companies frequently, that by the time you went off and got all the necessary approvals and permissions, the window of opportunity was gone. So what you should do is go make it happen. Go do what's right, and then apologize later on for not having followed the chain of command. Again, small companies, typically you don't have to worry about that too much, because the chain of command should be small. But keep it in mind, particularly if you're dealing with a big customer. Or if you are an entrepreneurial company and your customer is a big company, you may have to do some shortcuts and come back and apologize later. Okay. It's the end of this module. We are going to, in our next module, to look at management plans, some of the collaboration tools I talked about, and a very important area that frequently doesn't get covered in college courses is negotiating strategies. And they are very important because negotiation is something that you will do a great deal of as an entrepreneur. So please join me in the next module.